I want to mention quickly tomorrow morning between 8:30 and 9 o'clock, we're going to be joined by one of the medical professionals, one or more from Tripp Family Medicine right here in Twin Falls, Idaho. I'll point out, in fact, Dr. Tripp, of course, is, I think, with his family on a mission in Nicaragua at the moment as we speak. But we have several other medical professionals in the office, and we'll have a medical topic on the air tomorrow morning. And if it's something that you have an issue with and you need to ask someone for some advice, this is your opportunity to get a friendly voice to point you in the right direction. We do this every Wednesday morning. It's called Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine. I want to point out, too, the office is looking for new patients. And in fact, if you actually are a patient of Tripp Family Medicine, you can often find yourself, if you get up in the morning and let's say you have a little bit of I'll call it discomfort. That might be from something you ate the night before. If you call them, you can generally get in by the middle of the afternoon and have someone take a look at you. They won't be telling you, see me 3 weeks from Tuesday. I do want to point out, of course, it's coming up on 8:25:56 right now. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. I have a telephone caller who's been looking to get in touch with me for about the last 5 minutes or so. Caller, are you there? No, well, I think we moved the caller over to our rollover line. Caller, you're up next. You're on air.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. Thanks for taking my call again. I listened to what you said from that brainiac about wanting to abolish the police. You know, that's where our world's going. That's what Obama's talked people into thinking. So this is rubbish. I mean, I come up with a lot better words than that, but it's a joke. That deal in Dallas the other day. It's a horrible thing that it had to happen. But can you imagine what would have happened if that had been a Tea Party rally walking down the street and shots rang out by the same person for the same reason? They would have blamed the conservative party. This is crazy where we're going. And for people to even come into their mind that this is all the police's fault? Are you kidding me? Where the hell would we be without the police, the firemen, the paramedics? This country couldn't even start to run itself without those guys.
I would agree with you, and I thank you much for the call. I think that the old line is would be up some sort of creek without an oar. A creek in some parts of the country, I should point out, not mine. Steve Millington is in the studio with us today, too, as well. Our caller from Jerome, I think, sums up the opinions of a great many people in this area.
Well, that's not exactly incorrect. Where would we be? How do we do that? And part of what we're facing, the conundrum that we're looking at here with this whole thing is how come that people in this country have a question mark behind anything involved in law enforcement? It used to be when I was a kid growing up, boy, they were, and something has happened in the last few years. I don't think it's that many, maybe 15, 20 or something, where we have developed a questioning attitude, a distrust when it comes to law enforcement activities and actions, and it's not a healthy situation on either side. We shouldn't just take everything they say at face value and never question it. But at the same time, when they show up and say we need to do this and this and this, we need to say how can we help rather than how can we hurt. And our caller's correct. This is ludicrous that we're seeing this lawlessness become the new standard, if you will. And then those are my words. Don't put too much on that. But are we reaching the point where it's just commonplace to now challenge all of these authority figures and take them on?
We have another caller with us. Caller, you're on the air on News Radio 1310 KLIX.
Yes, a few years ago there was a terrible tsunami in Japan, and they had no looting because those people had principles. And I know tons of people that would never consider it in this country. But, it seems as though there's certain factions of our, society, whether be it white trash or immigrants from elsewhere, or victims people that have think they're victims, like Black Lives Matter. The first thing they do is start to raise hell, steal, loot. And you see, when we have a president who knows that he perpetuates this divide, and nobody calls him out on it, it seems. I mean, certainly we do, and a certain part of the media, but very little. Again, the good people of this country cry out for justice and common sense, and you wonder if there's a leader left that will do something and that we could put our faith in. Thanks, guys.
Hey, thank you.
Good point. Have we reached that point, that precipice where that we just don't have a good leader?
Question we will know in a matter of a few months.
Yep.
We want to point out we have a short break coming up. Steve Millington is in studio with us. He's also brought along a special guest. So we'll talk a little bit in the next half hour about the rumor mill, which involved Mike Crapo as a possible vice presidential nominee. But we should also point out Steve's guest may also be able to offer some insight on Jeff Sessions, too, in that very same role. That's up in a few minutes. We want to point out you're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com. The show is Top Story with Bill Colley. I wanted to point out, of course, you're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And on Tuesday mornings in this time period, we sit down with the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party, Steve Millington. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on the air till 10 o'clock this morning. We do this, of course, Monday through Friday. I do want to remind you very quickly, we've been telling you all about the summer heat. You didn't notice it this morning if you got out of bed. There wasn't much of it. So we're transitioning. We're talking about the upcoming cold weather. And it's hard to believe, but that's on the way. And you need, of course, repairs done in advance. You don't want to get to that first really chilly night and go flip on the switch and not have any heat. So you need to call the professionals at Ramsey Heating and Electric. The team at Ramsey's will make sure it's done right the first time. Problem-free, cozy winters are found at Ramsey Heating and Electric. 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. You can give them a call. That number is 678-0459, Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. We should point out Steve Millington brought a guest along today.
Yes, I did. It's been really nice to have our eldest son, Quinn, visiting and his wife, Kathleen.
Quinn, can you pull the microphone down?
Sure.
Yeah, because Quinn is visiting from Alabama.
Yep, Montgomery, Alabama.
So the question we want to ask from anybody from Alabama is, what's the odds of Jeff Sessions, there we go, being vice presidential nominee for the Republican Party?
Hadn't thought about it a whole lot, but I think that he is a contender because he is a Christian, and he's very level-headed. He's got a strong background in law. He has served previously in Alabama as the Attorney General. He's well respected. From a personal standpoint, I've not spent a lot of time with him, but my wife actually has. Went to his house and picked up a little nativity that we displayed at a church event and spent an hour and a half with him, sent me a couple of pictures, and she came back and said, boy, he is a real person. He stood there in his sweatpants and sweatshirts with his wife, who is a real person, and we had the funnest conversation. He understands the real world. And I think that the people throughout the South, the evangelicals, will connect with him very quickly and easily. And if Trump's looking for a way to try and get some help in that respect, somebody who is very level-headed, very articulate. I don't think he's as articulate and quick in his wording as, say, a Newt Gingrich, but he is very articulate. He's very careful of what he says, and he's very level. He doesn't get flustered one way or the other. He really likes to look and find a balance in what he says. And I think that there's some strength in that thought process. Whether or not he's up at the top, I don't know.
And of course, he's been on board with Trump since early on in all of this. So, from a loyalty perspective,
very, very, very loyal.
He was one of those people who did not join the Never Trump campaign. He kind of held back from that and said, "Let's get through the primary process and see what we got. Let's give Trump a chance to tell us what he thinks and where his positions are, and then we can go forward." Session would be an interesting, pick. He's got the. He's not really considered to be a total insider in Washington D.C., so that gives him kind of the outsider brush. But like Quinn said, he's got a great deal of skills. He comes from a Republican state, so if they moved him up, they could appoint another Republican senator from No, would they appoint one, or would they have to have another election? I'm not sure. But anyway,
It's going to be a Republican.
Yeah, that's the right
yeah,
state.
he comes from the right state. That's true.
Speaking of senators who are being, I don't know how Ann
yeah.
Coulter picked this up.
You know, there's two or three things. I'm not sure where Ann Coulter. Surely somebody dropped a name somewhere. In the news yesterday, there was lots of denials from all of Senator Crapo's staff people, chief of staff, right on down to the local level. No, 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 not any conversations, not going to happen. So that's interesting. Ann Coulter, in her approach to how does Trump go about selecting somebody who could be a vice presidential running mate? She has several things that she points out and says, well, now, how could this person possibly be there if we take into consideration these things? One of them was, what are we going to do about the border? He's been very adamant that he's going to demand some rather sweeping changes in immigration policy, and so we start looking at potential running mates who we could look at. Well, Marco Rubio's completely off the page because he come up with this.
Susana Martinez as well. They're not getting along.
No, and Corker, Bob.
Tennessee, right?
Yeah, Tennessee. Well, he jumped on Rubio's bill in the Senate and helped push it through the Senate, even though it died in the House on this immigration program. So you can't have Bob Corker in there because has an ideological difference with Trump on immigration issues. So Rubio's off the page. Bob Corker's off the page. You would think. That doesn't mean anything. We haven't got anybody selected yet. Chris Christie has run out of markers, and so he might be a good cabinet appointee. See,
Attorney
General, yeah. But how do you bring him along? You know.
Hold those thoughts. We've got more. We can fill out this cabinet in a matter of minutes.
Yeah, we can. We can get it filled up real good.
In fact, maybe we can discuss the Department of the Interior and how some rumors may have just been to deflect the actual offer. Details on that coming up in a few minutes. It's 20 minutes now from 9 o'clock, 58. You're listening to Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We have a couple of guests in studio with us today. Not only Steve Millington, but his son Quinn joining us until 9 o'clock today. It's coming up on 8:44. It's 59. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Quinn, did you come in for the anniversary celebration a few days ago?
I am just in town. I got kids out here in Utah and in Idaho, brothers and sister up in. We just came to visit.
We were talking earlier about, how scattered the family is, I guess, with family in Wyoming, too.
Yeah, we have Wyoming and Alabama and several in Idaho.
All friendly states, we should point out.
I actually forgot about their anniversary until it was over. It was July 5, and my reminder went off on my phone on July 6th.
I'll never forget one time when I was a young fellow and I was home visiting in my hometown. The wife and I had gone for a visit, and we were at my sister's house, and my mother called, and my sister said, "Oh, we're having some cake right now." She said, "For what?" And my sister said, "For the birthday party." And it was my birthday, and my mother said, "Whose birthday?"
Yeah.
Well, she probably wanted to forget that day.
Yeah, right.
We want to point out, speaking of Wyoming, this is a short clip from John Barrasso, who's a senator.
Right.
And I think you were telling me he is running the platform committee.
He is the chairman of the platform committee at the National Convention.
This is him speaking about their work.
We have had input from about 115,000 people around the country leading up to the convention. We've had input from people at state parties. This is really a grassroots effort. What you heard is people coming from around the country and coming together, all very much opposed to what's happened to this country in the last 8 years under President Obama.
Now, I read this morning at Daily Signal a story that says that there will be a provision in the platform about this shared bathroom issue, that the Republicans will be opposed to that. And it was a fight, but apparently it's going to stay in there at this point.
Yes, that's what I read yesterday in the news summaries that I looked at. One of the I think the media is looking for anything they can grasp here to cast dispersions of any kind upon the Republican convention. The first one they found was that the um, uh, I can't think of the name of the subcommittee, the social issues or whatever. Anyway, they were talking about all of these social events, and one of them was the shared bathroom, the transgender idea on bathrooms. And the Republicans said, no, we're just gonna. That's a state's issue, and it's not a good idea. So they can take care of that themselves. It's interesting that the people on that particular subcommittee, and I can't remember the specific name of it, but the composition of that committee was I want to say 3 men and 12 women. And one of the women is really pushing for the um, same-sex marriage plank and the gender identity thing, but she was voted down almost unanimously on every position that she put. And I thought, this is a mostly female committee, and yet they're voting against all of these social type issues that they want to include in the platform committee. That it was just interesting to me that it just got not every single plank that she proposed was eliminated from consideration, not consideration, it was eliminated for inclusion in the final platform presentation. And I thought, that's interesting.
No, the nominee, potential nominee, because it's not a done deal yet, says he thinks it's a state's issue. But the other big part of this, when I say he's not yet the nominee, I keep reading Eric Erickson, and I'm reading commentary out of the Weekly Standard from Bill Kristol, and they all still seem to believe that they're going to be able to go into this convention and push Trump out of the way.
That is a 1,000,000 to 1 shot. If the Rules Committee at the convention, if the Rules Committee change the rule structure for the committee, for the convention, in order to release all of the committed delegates and let them vote however they want on the first round of balloting, they might be able to eliminate Trump, and they may not get the necessary votes to make a nominee, to get a nominee, I'm sorry, but on the second round of balloting, you would have a whole new set of rules. I'm not sure just exactly what kind of kickback that would have around the country. Many people, wow.
When we talk a little bit about Trump, and I was watching the Morning Joe crowd today for a few minutes. It's all I could take of it. And they were all saying, it's no contest. Hillary's so much in the lead. I saw about 3 points maybe, but in other words, you Republicans need not show up on election day. It's a done deal, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I think the direction of the country and recent events show us it's still a very open race, and I wouldn't at this point say that it's all over with for Trump.
I don't think we can say that. and frankly, the 1,000,000 to 1 odds on the Rules Committee changing that particular rule and releasing all of the committed delegates, I don't think that's going to happen.
Now, if Trump indeed does win, because as I say, the rolling average from Real Clear Politics was about 3 points this morning. If he ends up as president, and you have a couple of more things like Dallas, if tragically they happen, could well put Trump over the top, I think, with the American voters. But if he wins, we talked earlier about these rumors about Mike Crapo, which probably were done just to keep people off the main path. But Mike Crapo could still have a job in the Trump White House.
Just my personal feelings. One of the cabinet level positions, which has great impact in the Western United States, unusually high impact in the Western United States, is the Secretary of Interior. And the reason why that particular position is so critical throughout mostly the Western United States.
And you're not speaking on any knowledge. This is just your opinion of what could happen.
This is a wild guess. The senator will call me and chasten me mightily for even having suggested it. Yeah. However, the senator will be here on August 10th to the Twin Falls County picnic
on a Wednesday night.
On a Wednesday night at the Twin Falls City Park, and you can ask him yourself. But one of the big things that happens is the Secretary of Interior, and that is because both the Bureau of Land Management and the U.S. Forest Service are both under the perusal of Secretary of Interior. And so you've got Montana and Wyoming and Colorado, not so much, but a lot. Nevada, huge. Utah, huge. Idaho, huge. Some major areas in Washington and Oregon and Alaska. Huge impact from federal lands. And the administration of all of these federal lands issues resides with the Department of Interior. Well, Senator Crapo has always been a real staunch, we need to change the way we're administering this whole thing so that the federal government administrative people become more responsive and in tune with the states regarding these particular land issues. It's a huge, Nevada has like 72 or 74% federal ownership. Utah's next at 68, 69. Idaho's right behind that at 66 or 67%. So, you take those three states, the kind of the Great Basin states thing right there, that is an absolutely overwhelming majority. And many people will say that Idaho in particular, our economic base in the state of Idaho would expand so rapidly if Idaho had control of those lands. Now, I don't want the fish and game and wildlife people and the mountain bikers, and don't blow a fuse here. We're not suggesting that all of the lands would be sold to private parties. They would simply be that the administration of it would be simply transferred to state authority rather than federal authority. Well, that's going to be a huge issue in the minds of many people, and Senator Crapo would be right in the middle. He's an Idaho native and resident. He understands those issues very well. He would be a interesting choice for Secretary of the Interior.
It would kick off, though, a real in Idaho, because you don't have to worry about a Democrat necessarily coming and taking that seat somewhere down the road. I mean, you could have someone appointed to fill it, and then that person would likely hold it as a Republican. And there are a lot of Republicans. You were just mentioning Steve Yates as well. Not that he would become a U.S. Senator, but as our state chairman is also at the Democrat National Committee in Cleveland.
Republican National Convention.
Or rather, excuse me, I said a bad word there.
Yeah, you did. I was about ready to jump up off his chair and come around there and whoop on you, fella. Steve Yates, the Idaho State Chairman, is the co-chair of the Platform Subcommittee on National Security and Defense. Now, this fits very well with much of his prior background.
Right.
He was the Security and Defense Advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney during his term in the White House. And after that, he worked with a couple of think tanks on national security issues in Washington before he moved his family to Idaho Falls. And prior to the term with Dick Cheney, he was, I can't remember, but he was involved in similar assignments concerning these things. Very seldom will Steve Yates discuss, he can't, obviously, for security reasons, but in private conversations, I have heard him say, well, once when I was in Iraq, once when I was in Afghanistan. So he is somewhat more familiar, he is greatly more familiar with those things than most of us in the state of Idaho. And I think you would have to say, based on his tenure with Vice President Cheney, that he has a great deal of knowledge. So he is co-chairing the Platform Subcommittee on National Security and Defense Issues. And so when we see the platform plank for national security and defense, much of that is going to have the footprint of Steve Yates attached to it. He will see to it that gets navigated through that committee and sent to the regular platform.
So they're working very closely with the presumptive nominee then,
yes,
right?
They
to try
are.
to come to an agreement on all, because they all want to be on the same page when they leave town.
Now, yes, they do. And another thing with Steve Yates is that they call him a spokesman surrogate. Now, Nobody could define exactly what that meant completely for me. However, he is a quote designated spokesperson for Trump campaign. So if they have big issues and media people, the color of his identification tag is going to indicate this is a guy that you can go to and get information. So uh, Steve Yates has a pretty behind the scenes, no doubt, but wow, Idaho got on the front page.
And by the way, I do want to point out next week, as all of the convention takes place, I'm going to have regular updates on air from all people Kevin Miller, because I guess their budget was a little bigger, so the company's sending Kevin instead of me as the Idaho media representative. But Kevin will be briefing us on air, likely during the course of next week's program.
And Kevin is with another Town Square media station
in Boise.
Right.
So he'll be giving us updates throughout the course of the week, and that is if they can keep him away from all the restaurants. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's always a problem. So is Mike Crapo going to be a serious contender for vice president? Nah, I don't think so. I really don't think so. Is he perhaps on a long list? I don't think it's a short list yet. Is he on a long list of names for positions in the Trump administration? The first one that comes to my mind is Interior. Another one that he could handle pretty comfortably would be those items associated with finance and banking, because he is the ranking. He's the assistant chairman of the Senate Bank House.
We can say he knows his dollars and cents.
Yeah, he knows his dollars and cents, and he also is very astute on national debt and those kind of things. He could. And you know, the nuances of what if he took one of those positions, and then how do we backfill the United States Senator position? And keep in mind, he's going to be reelected as United States Senator. So whoever is appointed to his position doesn't have to run for reelection for 6 years.
2022.
So,
well, we want to thank Steve Millington and Quinn Millington for coming along today, joining us in studio and doing a little handicapping on who'll be the vice president nominee of the United States or the Republican Party. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I do expect a Republican victory. We've got another hour of the program coming up. You're listening to Top Story with Bill Colley on KLIX.